I remember the night the city sounded different. Traffic outside our apartment hummed like a warning instead of comfort. I stood at the balcony, staring at the glow of streetlights, holding a cold mug of coffee that tasted like regret. My name is Michael Carter, and for the first time in my life, I felt marriage slipping without a single argument. Rebecca had always loved order. She labeled kitchen jars, folded shirts into exact squares, planned weekends like business meetings. That night, she moved through the living room quietly, phone pressed to her ear, voice low, careful. When she noticed me watching, she smiled, the polite smile she used with strangers. It landed heavy in my chest. We met years earlier in this same city, two ambitious people chasing security. Back then, love felt loud. We argued, laughed, cooked burgers at midnight, shared dreams about property, children, and legacy. Now the apartment felt staged, like a model home waiting for buyers. Everything clean. Nothing warm. I tried to tell myself I was paranoid. Urban life teaches suspicion, but patterns do not lie. Rebecca started coming home late, not smelling of work or traffic, just neutral, empty. She stopped asking about my projects. She stopped touching my arm when she passed behind my chair. Small changes, sharp enough to cut. One evening, I noticed a new password on our shared laptop. She said it was for privacy. Another time I found printed documents hidden inside a cookbook. Financial statements. Property valuations. I did not read them. I did not need to. My mind filled the gaps faster than facts ever could. Sleep became a negotiation. I lay awake listening to her breathing, counting seconds between inhales, wondering when love had turned into strategy. In the mornings, she kissed my cheek and grabbed a bagel, talking about traffic and meetings. Normal words, unnatural tone, every sentence felt rehearsed. There was history in my bones telling me to pay attention. I grew up watching men lose everything because they trusted silence. My father used to say, "Pride makes you deaf before it makes you poor." I laughed at that advice once. That laugh returned to haunt me. Flashbacks came uninvited. Our wedding day under city lights, her promise steady, my voice shaking. The first apartment we could barely afford. The night we celebrated buying our second property with greasy fries and cheap wine. Those memories pressed against the present, asking questions no one wanted answered. I wanted to confront her. I wanted to demand honesty. But fear has a way of slowing brave people. I needed truth, not drama. So I listened. I watched. I learned the rhythm of her secrets without knowing their names. The city kept moving, uncaring. Sirens, buses, street vendors, calling out dinner specials. Life continued while my marriage paused in a silent hallway. Something important was forming beneath the surface. Something that would change us both. I did not yet know what I would do. I only knew the ground beneath me felt unstable. When trust shifts, survival takes over. And somewhere between the hum of traffic and the quiet of our bedroom, a plan began to grow, unnamed, waiting for the right moment to breathe. Outside, neighbors laughed on balconies, living lives that seemed untouched. I wondered how many of them hid the same fear behind closed doors. In a city this crowded, loneliness finds creative ways to sit beside you. I promised myself I would not be careless. I would not be cruel. I would be prepared, even if preparation cost me sleep, comfort, and the version of love I once believed was permanent. That promise echoed like a drumbeat, steady and private. I did not know where it would lead, only that denial was no longer an option. The story of us was changing chapters. The next page would demand choices that separate the naive from the awake. Nothing had exploded yet, but tension has its own sound. It whispers before it screams. And I was finally listening. I did not realize this silence would teach me more about loyalty, pride, and survival than any loud betrayal ever could in the end alone there. Asterisk the next morning. I woke before Rebecca. Dawnlight cut through the blinds, striping the bedroom like prison bars. She slept on her side, back turned to me, phone tucked under her pillow. That alone told me more than any confession could. Years ago, she charged her phone openly on the nightstand. Secrets change habits. I moved quietly, dressed, and left the apartment early. The elevator ride down felt longer than usual. Every mirror reflected a man who looked the same, but thought differently. Outside, the city greeted me with its usual impatience horns, footsteps, coffee carts, steaming on corners. Life was loud, but inside me, something had gone still. At work, numbers blurred on my screen. I worked in commercial real estate, an industry built on leverage, timing, and foresight. Funny how I could read markets but miss the tremors at home. Or maybe I saw them and chose comfort over truth. Around noon, my phone buzzed. A text from Rebecca. Long day. Don't wait for dinner. 5 words. No emoji, no warmth. I stared at the screen longer than necessary, then slipped the phone into my pocket. My chest tightened. This wasn't about dinner. That afternoon, I took a detour. I met Thomas, an old colleague, at a downtown diner that smelled of grilled beef and burnt toast. He noticed my distraction before I spoke. "You look like someone planning an exit," he said, half joking, pushing a plate of fries toward me. I didn't answer directly. I talked about work, markets, property values. I asked questions that circled around asset protection without landing. Thomas listened, chewing slowly, eyes sharp. "Whatever you're not saying," he finally said, "don't wait until it's too late to say it to yourself." Those words followed me all the way back to the office. Late that evening, after most lights went dark, I did something small but irreversible. I opened a new email account. Neutral name. No personal details. A place for thoughts that couldn't live anywhere else. At home, Rebecca arrived after 9. She moved straight to the shower, leaving her bag on the couch. I didn't plan to look. I swear that. But when her phone vibrated inside the bag, instinct won. The screen lit up just enough to show a notification banner. Documents reviewed. "We can discuss next steps. No sender name." Just words heavy enough to bend my knees. I didn't open the message. I didn't need to. My heart pounded, but my face stayed calm. When she came out, wrapped in a towel, she talked about a coworker's promotion, about traffic, about nothing that mattered. I nodded, played my role. Years of partnership had trained me well. That night, sleep refused me again. Flashbacks crashed in waves. Rebecca laughing in our first apartment, dancing barefoot while music played from a cheap speaker. Rebecca crying when we signed the papers for our biggest investment. Rebecca whispering, "We're a team. Teams don't move in silence." Over the next week, I became an observer in my own marriage. I noticed how she took calls on the balcony, how she minimized screens when I walked past, how she asked oddly specific questions about my business structures, framed as casual curiosity. "Just thinking out loud," she said once. Eyes not meeting mine. I started documenting everything not because I wanted war, but because truth needs witnesses. Dates, times, changes, patterns. I wasn't angry yet. I was alert. One evening, while clearing old files on my laptop, I stumbled across a scanned image from years ago. Rebecca's handwriting on a note taped to my first office desk. "Build something that lasts. I believe in you." I closed the file and sat there longer than necessary. Love doesn't disappear all at once. It erodes, grain by grain, till one day you realize the ground feels different under your feet. Foreshadowing doesn't shout. It hints I still hadn't moved anything. Not money, not property, not trust. But the idea had taken shape. Preparation is not betrayal. It's survival with dignity. Outside, rain streaked the windows, blurring the city into a watercolor of lights in motion. Somewhere beneath that rain, decisions were being made by her. By me, without conversation. Without mercy. And the most dangerous part wasn't what I suspected. It was how calm I was becoming. By the 3rd week, I understood something uncomfortable about myself. Fear had sharpened my focus. I was no longer guessing. I was reading between actions the way seasoned traders read markets before a crash. Rebecca's behavior had rhythm now, and rhythm tells stories. She started cooking again. Not because she wanted to, but because timing demanded it. Steak with mashed potatoes. Fried chicken with corn on the side. Familiar meals meant to remind me of better years. I thanked her. Right. I didn't comment on the performance. Late one night, she asked a question that sounded innocent enough. If something ever happened to us, she said, rinsing dishes, would you want things to be fair? The word fair hung in the air like smoke. Fair is complicated, I replied carefully. Depends on who's defining it, she nodded, still facing the sink. Water ran longer than necessary. Silence followed. Not the comfortable kind. That weekend, I ran into Angela, a property manager I'd worked with for years at a downtown parking garage. She noticed my distraction immediately. You're carrying weight that doesn't belong to work, she said. I laughed it off, but she didn't push. People in business learn when not to pry. Still, her words stayed with me. I was carrying something, and it was changing how I moved through the world. Monday morning, I scheduled a consultation under the excuse of estate planning. The office sat in a glass building overlooking the city, clean lines, neutral colors. The kind of place where decisions are made quietly and respected later. The advisor spoke in calm, measured sentences about structures, protections, foresight. Preparation is not accusation, he said. It's clarity. That sentence settled something inside me. I didn't act yet. I listened. I learned. I asked questions, framed as hypotheticals. Each answer felt like a step closer to solid ground. At home, Rebecca grew restless. She checked the mail obsessively. She asked when I'd be home, then acted indifferent when I arrived. Our conversations shrank into logistics. Groceries, schedules, bills. Love reduced to bullet points. Flashbacks hit harder now. I remembered the night she cried in my arms after losing a promotion. The way she said, "Promise me we'll never become strangers." I had promised. I meant it. Promises, I was learning, can be broken without words. One evening, found a folded piece of paper in the trash, shredded but not enough. I didn't mean to look. I just noticed my name. It took minutes to piece together enough lines to understand it was a draft, not final. The language was formal, careful, legal. I sat on the edge of the tub, paper in my hands, heart steady in a way that surprised me. The shock I expected never came. Only confirmation. That night, Rebecca slept soundly. I stared at the ceiling, counting shadows, thinking about pride. Pride makes men reckless when wounded. I refused that path. I would not rage. I would not beg. I would not rush. Instead, I made a list not of assets, but of values. Stability, dignity, future, peace. The city outside never slept. Somewhere, deals closed, relationships ended, plans were executed. Life moved forward without waiting for emotional readiness. By midweek, I noticed something else. Rebecca had started being kinder. Compliments, gentle touches, laughter that sounded almost real. It should have comforted me. Instead, it confirmed timing. People soften right before they cut loose. Foreshadowing isn't dramatic. It's polite. On Friday, she suggested we attend a friend's gathering downtown. I agreed. We played the part well. Smiles, stories, shared glances that fooled everyone else. I wondered how many couples there were doing the same quiet dance. Smiling through exits already planned on the ride home, she rested her head on my shoulder. For a moment, the past tried to reclaim me. For a moment, I wanted to believe. Then her phone buzzed. She shifted quickly, checking it before I could see. She smiled faintly and said, "Just work." I said nothing. That night, after she fell asleep, I opened the neutral email account again. I typed one sentence and stared at it for a long time before saving it as a draft. Preparation does not mean I stopped loving her. It means I refused to be blindsided. The line felt true, honest, necessary. The next step would change everything. I could feel it waiting, like a door at the end of a quiet hallway. I wasn't rushing toward it. I was walking steady, aware, resolved, and soon there would be no turning back. Asterisk, the decision didn't arrive with drama. It came quietly on a Tuesday morning, while I watched a man across the street unlock his food truck and prepare for another long day. There was something grounding about routine. People move forward even when their personal worlds shake. I took comfort in that. That morning, Rebecca left early, dressed sharper than usual. Dark blazer. Neutral perfume. The kind she wore when she wanted to feel in control. She kissed my cheek and said we should talk later. No explanation. No urgency. Just enough to keep my thoughts spinning. At the office, I didn't check messages. I didn't scroll. I focused. By noon, I was seated again in the glass building, overlooking the city, signing documents that spoke in calm legal language. Nothing illegal. Nothing hidden. Just decisions made with foresight instead of fear. As my pen moved, flashbacks pressed hard. The night Rebecca and I toasted to our first successful deal with greasy burgers and warm soda. The way she said we did this together. That memory stayed with me as I initialed pages that quietly redefined what together meant. When I finished, the advisor nodded. No congratulations. No judgment. Just professional respect. Clarity is expensive, he said. But confusion costs more. On the way out, I felt lighter and heavier at the same time, like someone who had packed for a storm while still hoping the clouds would pass. That evening, Rebecca cooked again. Pasta with garlic bread. Comfort food. She poured wine and smiled too much. We've been distant, she said, finally sitting across from me. I don't like that. Neither did I, but I didn't interrupt. She talked about stress, about feeling unfulfilled, about wanting fairness, freedom, honesty, words chosen carefully like stepping stones across deep water. She didn't mention lawyers. She didn't mention separation. She wanted me to say it first. I agree, I said calmly. Distance changes things. Her eyes searched mine. She wanted emotion, reaction, cracks. What do you think we should do? She asked. There it was. I leaned back and studied her face, the woman I loved. The woman planning an exit. The woman sitting inches away, pretending we were still aligned. I think, I said slowly, that whatever happens, it should be clean, respectful, no surprises. Her shoulders relaxed just slightly. Relief disguised as agreement. Yes, she said. Exactly. That night I slept better than I had in weeks. Not because things were fixed, but because I wasn't lying to myself anymore. Over the next few days, subtle shifts followed. Rebecca became warmer, more attentive. She started asking about my day again. About my future plans? I answered honestly, just not fully. Honesty doesn't require self-sabotage. Angela called one afternoon about a property issue. We spoke briefly. When I hung up, Rebecca asked, "Everything okay?" Handled, I said. That word lingered between us. Friday came with rain and gray skies. Rebecca suggested we review finances together over the weekend. Just to get organized, she said. I agreed without hesitation. Prepared people don't panic at spreadsheets. Saturday afternoon, we spread documents across the dining table. She moved with confidence, pointing, calculating, suggesting. Halfway through, she paused. Some things are missing, she said carefully. Some things aren't shared, I replied just as carefully. The room went quiet. She looked up at me then, really looked. Something shifted in her expression. Not anger. Not fear. Recognition. I didn't realize, she said. I didn't announce it, I replied. I adjusted. She leaned back, folding her arms. The warmth she'd been performing faded. Why? She asked. I held her gaze. Because I felt you preparing for a future that didn't include me. Silence returned, thicker now. That was the first time truth touched the surface, but neither of us dove in. We cleaned up the papers, exchanged neutral words, moved on. But the air had changed. Power dynamics always do once secrets lose their invisibility. That night, Rebecca stayed awake long after I turned off the light. I could feel her thoughts moving, rearranging plans. The city outside reflected in the window like 1,000 watching eyes. I knew then that whatever came next would not be accidental. We had both stepped into awareness, and awareness doesn't allow easy endings. The real confrontation was coming. Not loud, not explosive, but decisive. And when it arrived, only one of us would be ready. After that weekend, the apartment felt like neutral ground. Not hostile, not loving, just careful. Every word was measured. Every glance carried calculation. Rebecca no longer pretended warmth. I no longer pretended ignorance. We were two intelligent people circling a truth neither wanted to name too early. Monday evening, she didn't come home until close to midnight. No message. No apology. I was on the couch, lights low, city noise filtering in through a cracked window. When she walked in, heels in hand, jacket over her arm, she stopped when she saw me. "You're still up," she said. "I live here." I replied evenly. She nodded and headed toward the bedroom, then paused. "We should talk soon." Really talk. Foreshadowing doesn't rush. It schedules itself. The next few days introduced new characters into our quiet drama. Rebecca's sister Olivia called more often. Short conversations that ended when I entered the room. Our mutual friend Kevin suddenly invited Rebecca to lunch alone. Patterns again. Always patterns. Flashback hit one night while I brushed my teeth. Rebecca and Olivia laughing in our kitchen years ago, talking about loyalty, about never settling for less. At the time, it sounded empowering. Now, it sounded like rehearsal. Thursday afternoon, I received an unexpected call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. "Michael, this is Nathan. We met briefly at the fundraiser last year. I was wondering if you had a moment to talk sometime." Nathan. I remembered him, smooth, polished, worked in consulting. Too familiar with Rebecca at that event. A man who listened more than he spoke. I didn't return the call. That night, Rebecca cooked nothing. She ordered takeout burgers, fries, milkshakes. Familiar food. Strategic comfort. Halfway through dinner, she spoke. "I've been unhappy," she said plainly. I waited. "I don't think we want the same things anymore." Still I waited, she exhaled. "I've talked to people. I've thought a lot. I think we should consider separating." There it was. Calm, controlled, practiced. "I figured," I said quietly. Her eyes widened. "Just a fraction you did." "Yes, how long?" "Long enough to prepare?" That word again. She set her burger down. "Prepare for what?" "For change." She studied me, suspicion creeping in. "You're not angry." "I was," I said. "Now I'm focused." Silence pressed in. This was the moment she expected: negotiation, guilt, emotion. I gave her honesty without weakness. "I want this to be fair," she said. "We built things together." "I agree," I replied. "Fair matters." The conversation ended without resolution. She went to bed early. I stayed up, staring at the city's skyline, thinking about trust. Trust doesn't break loudly. It dissolves when one person starts planning alone. The following week moved fast. Rebecca became efficient. She organized documents. She scheduled meetings. She was polite, almost professional. I mirrored her energy, calm, courteous, distant. One afternoon, I ran into Thomas again. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at me and said, "Storm's close, isn't it?" "Yes," I answered, but I packed. That night, Rebecca finally confronted the missing pieces directly. "I spoke to someone," she said, standing in the living room. "Some of the assets aren't where I expected, I know." "When did you do that?" "When I realized we weren't moving together anymore." Her voice tightened. "You did this behind my back." "So did you," I said gently. Her face changed then. Not anger, not sadness. Something colder. "You don't trust me." "I trusted you," I corrected. I stopped trusting silence. She turned away, pacing. "This changes things," as I said. "It does." She looked at me again, eyes sharper now. "You think you're smarter than me?" "No," I replied. "I think I'm awake." That ended the conversation. Late that night, while she slept, I thought about regret, about how love and pride wrestle for control when things fall apart, about how preparation feels cruel to the unprepared. I didn't feel victorious. I felt steady. The core of this story still sat beneath the surface, waiting. The real truth had not yet been spoken. And when it was, it would rearrange how both of us remembered our marriage. The city outside blinked, different. The final moves were coming. Asterisk, the truth doesn't always arrive like a storm. Sometimes it shows up disguised as routine. Rebecca and I settled into a strange rhythm, separate schedules, polite exchanges, shared space without shared intention. We were waiting for something. We're both pretending not to know what. That something arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. I came home earlier than expected. A meeting canceled last minute. The apartment was quiet, except for the low hum of the refrigerator. Rebecca's laptop sat open on the dining table. I wasn't looking for anything. I was reaching to close it when a notification slid across the screen. An email preview. Once the filing is complete, timing will be critical. My name appeared further down. I didn't read more than that. I didn't need to. The final puzzle piece clicked into place without noise. This wasn't a conversation she was preparing for. It was a process already in motion. I closed the laptop and sat down. My hands were steady. That surprised me most. Flashback hit hard, then Rebecca crying years ago when her first startup failed, saying she was afraid of being dependent on anyone. I remembered telling her she was safe with me. That marriage was partnership, not leverage. Somewhere along the way, safety turned into strategy. When she came home that evening, she sensed it immediately. People do when secrets lose their protection. "You're quiet," she said. "I learned something today," I replied. Her jaw tightened. "About what?" "About how far along you are." She set her bag down slowly. "I was going to tell you, eventually," I said. She crossed her arms, defensive, familiar. "I needed to be sure," she said. "I needed options." "So did I," I replied. Her eyes narrowed. "You moved things, yes? How much?" "Enough." She laughed once, sharp and short. "You really think this makes you clever?" "I think it makes me prepared." The argument never exploded. It stayed contained, controlled, like two professionals discussing a failed merger. That hurt more than shouting ever could. She accused me of acting without consent. I accused her of planning without conversation. We both told the truth from different sides of the same fracture. Later that night, she admitted something she hadn't planned to. "Nathan helped me think through things," she said casually. Too casually. "There it is," I said quietly. "It wasn't like that," she replied quickly. At first, I echoed. Silence followed. Heavy, final. I didn't ask for details. I didn't need timelines. Emotional betrayal doesn't require physical proof. Trust had already left the room. Foreshadowing completed its circle. Over the next few days, everything accelerated. Papers were prepared. Meetings scheduled. Polite emails exchanged. Rebecca stayed with her sister for a night, then two. The apartment felt larger, emptier, calmer. One afternoon, I met with the advisor again. We reviewed structures, protections, next steps. No drama. "Just clarity. You anticipated correctly," he said. "You acted early. Early enough to preserve dignity. Early enough to avoid devastation." That evening, Rebecca returned to collect more things. She moved efficiently. No lingering touches, no nostalgia. Before leaving, she paused at the door. "I didn't think you'd see it coming," she said. "I didn't," I replied. "I felt it." She studied me for a long moment, then nodded, like someone accepting a loss they didn't plan for. After she left, I stood alone in the apartment and felt something unexpected relief. Not happiness. Not victory. Relief that the guessing was over. That the silence had finally spoken. The city outside carried on. Sirens, laughter, life. Uninterrupted by personal collapse. I knew the core of this story was approaching. The moment where everything would be revealed, not just to her, but to me. Why this hurt? What it cost? What it saved? Preparation had protected my assets. What it had done to my heart was a different matter entirely, and the final reckoning was still ahead. The weeks after Rebecca moved out felt unreal. It's like living inside a paused frame while the rest of the city played at normal speed. Friends found out in pieces. Some reached out with concern. Others stayed silent, choosing sides without asking questions. That's how separation works in an urban world. People reduce complex stories into simple judgments so they can sleep better at night. Rebecca and I spoke only through messages. Now, short, polite, functional, schedules, logistics, legal language replacing shared memories. Every exchange felt like a reminder that love, once converted into process, loses its warmth forever. One afternoon I received a formal notice. The filing had been submitted. I sat at my desk, the paper in my hands, and felt a strange calm settle in. No shaking. No anger. Just clarity. The moment I had prepared for had arrived exactly as expected. Preparation changes how impact feels. Flashback struck hard then. The first time Rebecca and I argued about money years ago, she'd said I'd just never want to feel powerless. I'd brushed it off, told her we were building something solid. I believed it. She must have believed something else. That evening, I met Thomas again, this time at a quiet bar overlooking the city. We didn't talk much at first. Just watched traffic slide below us like veins of light. She filed, I finally said. He nodded. And I'm okay. He studied me. You don't sound surprised. I wasn't. He took a sip of his drink. That's the difference between reacting and deciding. The legal process moved quickly. Rebecca's tone shifted when she realized the landscape wasn't what she had expected. Meetings that once felt confident now carried tension. Questions came faster. Assumptions cracked. She accused me again, this time with frustration instead of strategy. You planned this? She said during one mediated session. I prepared. I corrected. You planned without me. She leaned back, eyes tired now. You made me feel like a stranger, I said quietly. I felt like one long before I moved anything. That ended the accusation. Truth has a way of doing that. Nathan appeared briefly during the process, hovering at the edges, then disappeared just as quickly when things stopped feeling advantageous. Rebecca noticed. That realization cut deeper than anything I said. Some lessons don't require commentary. As negotiations continued, something unexpected happened. I began to feel free. Not relieved, not happy, but unburdened. The weight of constant vigilance lifted. The fear of being blindsided evaporated. Freedom isn't loud. It's quiet. It's waking up without checking someone else's phone habits. It's coming home without scanning expressions. It's trusting your instincts again. Rebecca noticed the change. You're different, she said once, voice softer than it had been in months. So are you, I replied. She nodded. I thought you'd fight harder. I fought earlier, I said, when it mattered. It stuck with her. The settlement concluded without spectacle, fair, clean. Final, the assets, protected, remained intact. The shared ones were divided as agreed. No drama, no revenge. Just consequences aligned with preparation. On the last day, we signed papers. Rebecca hesitated before standing up. I never thought you'd be this calm, she said. I wasn't calm at first, I replied. I was scared. I just didn't let fear drive. She looked at me for a long moment, then sighed. I wish I'd talked to you sooner. So do I said honestly. We walked out separately that night. Alone in the apartment, I cooked for myself for the first time in years. A simple meal. Steak, potatoes, something grounding. I ate slowly, tasting the food instead of the memory attached to it. Pride tried to rise. I pushed it down. This wasn't about winning. It was about surviving without losing yourself. The core truth hovered close now, waiting to be fully understood. Preparation saved my finances, yes. But it also revealed something deeper about trust, about silence, about the cost of not speaking when you still can, The final lesson was coming, and it wouldn't be about money at all. Asterisk, the apartment changed after the divorce papers were finalized. Not physically, emotionally. Rooms felt honest again. Quiet without tension. Empty without accusation. I rearranged furniture, donated clothes that carried old arguments in their fabric, opened windows more often. Healing doesn't announce itself. It sneaks in through small decisions. Weeks passed, then months. People assume the hardest part of separation is the paperwork, the negotiations, the division of things. That's not true. The hardest part is relearning how to trust your own judgment after it once failed you. Every memory becomes evidence you re-examine late at night. Flashbacks still came, but softer now. Rebecca laughing over burnt pancakes. Rebecca asleep on my chest during late movies. Rebecca saying, "We'll always tell each other the truth." Those moments didn't disappear. They simply lost their power to control me. One evening, while walking through the city after work, I realized something that stopped me mid-step. I wasn't angry anymore. Not at her. Not at myself. Anger burns fast, but clarity stays warm longer. I ran into Rebecca unexpectedly weeks later at a grocery store. Ordinary place. Ordinary moment. She looked different. Not worse. Not better. Just unguarded. "Hi," she said. "Hi," I replied. We stood there between shelves of cereal and canned soup. Two people who once planned a life now sharing a pause. "You seem okay," she said. "I am," I answered honestly. She nodded slowly. "I didn't expect that." "I didn't either," I admitted. She hesitated. "I thought moving quietly would protect me. I thought love meant silence sometimes." I said. We shared a look that held understanding without forgiveness, regret without blame. That was enough. As she walked away, I felt the final piece settle into place. The core truth of everything I'd lived through. I didn't move my assets because I stopped loving my wife. I moved them because I realized love without communication becomes a liability, because trust isn't maintained by promises alone, but by courage, the courage to speak before strategy replaces honesty. Preparation saved my financial future, yes. But more importantly, it saved my sense of self. It taught me that loyalty doesn't mean blindness, and faith doesn't require self-destruction, that you can love deeply and still protect your foundation. Back home that night, I sat on the balcony again, same spot where this journey began. The city lights blinked like they always had. Traffic hummed. Life continued. Only this time the sound felt steady, not threatening. I thought about pride. How it silences people when humility could save them. I thought about regret, how it grows in the absence of conversation. I thought about freedom, not the reckless kind, but the quiet freedom of knowing you faced the truth early, even when it hurt. The lesson wasn't about divorce, or money, or winning. It was about awareness. The moment you feel something is wrong and choose not to ask, you start teaching the other person how to leave you without resistance. Silence is not patience. It is permission. If I could speak to the version of myself from months ago, standing at that balcony with cold coffee and heavy thoughts, I'd say this: pay attention. Ask the hard questions. Protect what you build, but don't let protection replace connection. And if you must choose between comfort and clarity, choose clarity early. It costs less in the end. Some stories end with reconciliation. Others end with revenge. This one ended with respect for myself, for the truth, and for the quiet strength it takes to prepare without becoming cruel. The city lights blinked again, and for the first time in a long time, I felt ready to build something new without fear, without secrecy, and without losing myself in the process.